And I hope we have once again reminded people that man is not free unless government is limited. There's a clear cause and effect here that is as neat and predictable as a law of physics. As government expands, liberty contracts.
From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first.
Welcome back. The Liberty Podcast returns for yet another week. We are jam-packed today with information and enlightenment. Some of it entertaining, but most of it a little disturbing, I have to tell you, ladies and gentlemen. It's the 18th day of January. This new year is flying by, isn't it? We've got fewer than 300 days to Election Day in November 2024. Fewer than 300 days to save a constitutional republic that has never been, Democrats, a democracy. So, ex-nay on the democracy. You know, I realized something today. You want to get a feeling for what the economy, what kind of shape the economy is in, what kind of country we're living in right now, the mood of the people. Go to an auto dealership. I spent about an hour and a half at an auto dealership today. You know where all the action is at an auto dealership right now? The service department. Because everybody's hanging on to their cars, taking care of them, and bringing them in for regular service. The dealership that I visited in Kirby has so much demand, the technician told me, that they're expanding the service area by 4 additional bays. Construction is underway as we speak. Then I went in to sit down and relax in the showroom amid all the beautiful new 2024 vehicles. And you know what you notice in there? There's 7 guys at 7 desks. They're car salesmen. You know who's not in there? Customers. Not one. Not a single one. I think that's Bidenomics in a nutshell, who, by the way, was perilously nearby down the road today in Raleigh while I was in Cary. Luckily, his motorcade and my motorcade did not intersect at any point, and peace was restored in the land. Well, I've got a lot of stuff to get to today. I tried to condense and distill the best I can, but there's so much crazy going on right now that even I'm a little overwhelmed. And I'm supposed to be, you know, your humble field general standing in the breach and deflecting all this stuff. And I'm trying, folks. I'm trying, but my blood pressure monitor is telling me that I may not be holding up very well. Let me just tell you that right now. Hey, before I forget, remember this name, Chris Maples. Chris Maples. He is running for the U.S. House of Representatives in North Carolina's 8th District, which is nearby, which is being vacated by the excellent freedom fighter, fiscal freedom fighter, Dan Bishop, who is not seeking re-election to that seat in order to run for North Carolina Attorney General, which we need him to win that race big time. But we also need Chris Maples to earn our affection and receive our support as he begins his first congressional campaign. He has served as an aide in the field to both Bishop and Hudson. He is a naval veteran, a Coast Guard veteran, a longtime resident of the area. I've known him personally for a number of years, and they just don't come any better than Chris Maples. He is equipped to serve, and now he will do so, we hope, in the halls of Congress, although he'll have to bring his swamp protection gear because the swamp is swampier than ever, even at this moment in time, ladies and gentlemen, as another continuing resolution looms like a corrosive disease, a cancer that nobody sees, but that slowly kills. And who's aiding and abetting it? The Republicans. Speaker Mike Johnson. He's in there, elbow to elbow, buddy with Chuck Schumer. And Hakeem Jeffries and all these others who want to reach across the aisle and keep spending money that we don't have and sending money that we don't have by the boatloads or the pallet loads to Ukraine, to the Ukraine grift factory, otherwise known as the Ukraine military, I suppose. They like that name a little better than grift factory, I guess. Hey, how about this? Speaking of congressmen that we are proud of and that do the Lord's work and who don't yield and bend, how about our man from Ohio, the great Jim Jordan? Get a load of this. Yesterday, he sends a letter to a financial services outfit in San Francisco, California. Plaid Inc., it's called. Plaid is in Scottish plaid. The Committee on the Judiciary and the Select Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government are conducting oversight of federal law enforcement's receipt of information about American citizens without legal process and its engagement with the private sector. The committee has obtained documents indicating that following January 6, 2021, remember that day? Pretty important. FinCEN, now what is FinCEN? That is the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. FinCEN distributed materials to financial institutions that, among other things, outline the typologies of various persons of interest and provide financial institutions with suggested search terms to find these people. These materials included a document recommending the use of generic terms like Trump and MAGA. Also, according to this analysis, FinCEN warned financial institutions of extremism indicators that includes transportations for bus tickets, rental cars, or plane tickets for travel to areas with no apparent purpose. So now we have to prove that we have a reason for going somewhere in the eyes of these spies? Yes. In other words, FinCEN urged large financial institutions to comb through the private transactions of their customers for suspicious charges on the basis of protected political and religious expression. I have a feeling this is just the beginning of what we're going to hear about this and the work of Jim Jordan and his committee members. So let's move on very quickly here because time is always fleeting, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? It's amazing. Hey, did you think those Chinese communist lab guys you think they were taking a vacation since spreading the Wuhan virus of 2019, 2020? Do you think they've all just kind of gone back to normal activities in their little evil labs? Think again, folks. Here it is. A new report claims Chinese scientists have developed a coronavirus strain that attacks the brain. So I guess Joe Biden doesn't have to worry about it. And has a 100% kill rate in mice used to experiment with the virus. The report, which was obtained by the Daily Mail, a newspaper out of the United Kingdom, for those of you following along, indicates that Beijing-based scientists allegedly linked to Chinese military, of course, who else would they be linked to? The Girl Scouts? Cloned a virus which was originally discovered in 2019 in Malaysia prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. So what do you get with this little new virus strain? Well, this sounds like fun. Severe brain infection during the latter stages of infection may be the key cause of death in these mice. This is the first report showing that a SARS-CoV-2 related pangolin, it's a technical word, pangolin coronavirus, can cause 100% mortality. That means death for all you Democrats. In these mice. Now, the mice were engineered to have human-like characteristics. In other words, their brains were somehow manipulated so that they would be human-like in nature. I can see nothing of vague interest that could be learned from force infecting a weird breed of humanized mice with a random virus. Conversely, I could see how such stuff might go wrong. This was coming from one of the academicians who was asked to comment on this research. So, folks, just when you thought they're done with bioweapons and deadly viruses, I'm sorry to be the one to tell you, it's just probably the beginning. And, we learned that trend is continuing as well this week during the glorious World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, where you could only attend if you have a private jet and you're a complete loser, awful human being, with a few exceptions. 54th World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. That's in the Alps, the Swiss Alps, where the elite like to meet. And boy, did they ever this year. One of the topics of discussion at this year's World Economic Forum was this fabulous new Disease X. Disease X. Now, what is that? Well, Disease X is a theoretical disease that is being sort of war-gamed at the behest of the World Health Organization, which is in cahoots with the World Economic Forum people in the dedication toward achieving a one world government, a one world order, if you will, in which we would literally be diminished in every way. And the whole point of this Disease X is that it would be so lethal as to create such a long-term pandemic and such long-term hysteria that literally we would all be powerless, because it's 20 times, according to their warnings, 20 times more infectious, more lethal, more deadly than the COVID-19 virus that we all just somehow survived, even though it was, for many people, a bad cold, a flu-like episode. And for those who had deep and entrenched comorbidities, of course, pre-existing immune deficiencies and so forth, it did spell doom. But something was going to, if it wasn't this. So we know that that's the killing machine that is the planet Earth. Now, I want to get into some of these other areas that are overwhelming us all the time. And everything comes back to fraud, doesn't it? It's fraudulent. Fraudulent activities in labs, things that shouldn't be going on. And now we're coming up on, as I said earlier, less than 300 days to Election Day 2024. And Donald Trump has swept to a huge victory in the Iowa caucuses. Not surprising. We're coming up on the big heart of the primary season very shortly. February, March, a little bit in April and May. Super Tuesday falls in March, of course. It's has been for decades, I suppose. But, the problem is we focus on the candidates and the media coverage and all of these things that traditionally have been part of the discussion, the dialogue of a big election cycle, such as this one. I mean, they don't get much bigger when you've got every force out there conspiring to derail the return of Donald Trump and the ascension of the MAGA movement. I don't think they're going to succeed, but boy, they're never going to make it easy, not for one day. There are no days off. So if you're thinking of taking any days off in the next 290 plus days, think again. We're not members of Congress. We don't take snow days for 2 inches of snow, which they did earlier this week. But I just wanted to bring to your attention that since the 2020 elections, which, anybody with half a brain knows were compromised by the leveraging of the virus and all of the ways that the health crisis was used to hijack our voting system, especially through the use of mail-in, uncustodialized ballots. Those are the ones that were counted and then counted again, and in some cases counted a third time in various locations in the country on the evening that led to Joe Biden's ascension, coronation, because he wasn't really elected. We know that, right? So here's some reporting by the Epoch Times, always on top of everything. An ongoing study by the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank. Well, they're more than a think tank, I would say. They are a small army of intellectuals and writers and thinkers and researchers and many things that contribute to the greater good. Their ongoing study details widespread instances of election fraud across the United States and shows that the illicit activity has resulted in elections being overturned in at least a dozen races. And this is all since 2020. I mean, this is going on, and, you say, well, it's not the presidential race. Yeah, well, it matters, doesn't it? Doesn't it matter in school board races and state congressional and Senate races? Of course it does. Every race needs to be cloaked in the assurance of legitimacy, of course. In a number of cases, the abuse of the system is well calculated and organized. But in most instances, violations appear to have been committed by individuals acting independently. We call those lone wolves in the world of terrorism. Acting alone without direction from a terror cell or something. Well, they exist in this world too. A crazed person who can't stand the idea of someone he doesn't agree with or like being elected says, "I'm going to do something about it," and I can. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to mess with the system. I'm going to be a hero, a martyr. Heritage's findings were bolstered by a Rasmussen Reports and Heartland Institute poll. So that's two organizations polling together, 1,085 voters, published in December 2023. For those of you following along, that was just like a month ago, so recently. The poll found that 21% of those who voted by absentee or mail-in ballot in 2020 admitted to filling out a ballot, quote, in part or in full for someone else, which, oh, just by the way, is illegal. Of the 30% who said they voted by mail or absentee ballot in 2020, 19% said a friend or family member filled out their ballot in part or in full on their behalf. 1/5 said they signed a ballot or ballot envelope on behalf of a friend or a family member with or without their permission. How about that? Respondents were surveyed by telephone and online between November 30 and December 6, 2023. The results of this survey are nothing short of stunning, says Justin Haskins, who is with the Heartland Institute. For the past 3 years, Americans have repeatedly been told that the 2020 election was the most secure in history. But if this poll's findings are reflective of reality, the exact opposite is true. In two other polls, one conducted by the Washington Post University of Maryland, also in late 2023, last year, seems like only like a month ago. Well, because it was. Anyway, and another poll conducted by CNN earlier in 2023, between 36 and 38% of Americans surveyed believe that the election of President Joe Biden was illegitimate. Now, that's a Washington Post and CNN pair of polls. They're the most corrupt left-wing media entities out there. They're in like the top 5 of the worst. A Heritage Foundation survey says its election project consists of a sampling of election integrity issues and is by no means comprehensive or exhaustive. However, the instances of election fraud cataloged by Heritage are confirmed cases that were investigated by law enforcement and referred to prosecutors. So people know about this stuff. This isn't just hearsay. The subjects were indicted and either confessed in a plea deal or were convicted in the courts. So there you have it. People are deliberately doing this, and they're not going to stop as long as they think that there's ample ways to get away with it. And why do they think that? Because they've seen the outcome of these fraudulent elections. That's why. It doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure this out. And if your brain is being devoured by a new virus, the surgeon, won't be able to help you. Those guys will be out of business. Brain surgeons will be looking for work just like they'll be vying for jobs with Uber and Lyft at the rate we're going. I wanted to share with you some disturbing news from the world of aviation. And no, it's not the Alaska Airlines 737 MAX 9 by Boeing, whose side exit emergency door blew out at 16,000 feet after takeoff from Portland, Oregon, a place that you definitely want to be leaving whenever you can and not going back in most cases. But in this case, these poor people had to turn around and go right back on that airplane because the door blew out, and they didn't want people flying out, along with it. Luckily, nobody did. So that's nice. But here we have just in time to make you feel good about flying in the coming year. Now that we don't have to wear masks again, you might think it would be something we could look forward to, flying on jets again. But I don't know. The FAA, that's the Federal Aviation Administration, has said very openly that they are now all in on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Or I like to call it diversity, inclusion, and equity. Therefore, you get the acronym DIE, which seems so much more appropriate, does it not? The agency charged with overseeing airlines, plane makers, airports, and every other aspect of civil aviation has undertaken a diversity push meant to bring in workers whose inborn limitations make them unsuitable for high-stakes, high-pressured roles. The full list of disabilities targeted by the FAA, these are the people they want to hire, for special emphasis in recruitment and hiring includes severe intellectual disability, psychiatric disability, and a whole host of other ailments. You read that right. The severely intellectually disabled and the psychiatrically disabled will now be involved in making sure that planes don't hit the ground or run into each other. The agency won't even say which jobs these targeted hires will be doing. Given the recent Alaska Airlines disaster, due to a faulty plane from full-bore woke Boeing, the manufacturer, and the troubling string of near misses at U.S. airports, and we're not talking about people nearly missing their planes, we're talking about planes nearly missing each other, to say nothing of the other issues plaguing air travel, from unruly passengers to cascading delays, the FAA probably should be pushing to hire only the best and the brightest. Wouldn't that be a good idea? And I would dare say that there are plenty of fine young Americans out there who have overpaid for college educations and are ready to go to work. Speaking of United Airlines, and I try not to very often, I'm not a big fan, never have been really, of United Airlines. The CEO, Scott Kirby, is facing intense social media backlash after a video resurfaced showing him boasting about the company's diversity initiatives, which require higher numbers of women and minority workers. During an interview with Axios on HBO, Kirby said the company has committed to ensuring 50% of their graduating pilot classes will be women or people of color, up from 19%, which it was what it was last year. White males don't just dominate in the cockpits, but also in the C-suite at United, an interviewer accused Kirby. So what are you doing about hiring more of those people in the C-suites? And by the way, Kirby has also been captured on video as a cross-dressing drag queen. I'm not making it up. Fly the filthy skies of United, ladies and gentlemen. And just by the way, next time you get on a flight and you peek your head in the cockpit, are you looking for a robust transy, or maybe somebody with, a little bit of a nervous twitch at the controls of your aircraft? Or do you want a big old, healthy, all-American, slightly balding, gray, white Republican guy who knows a thing or two about navigating around turbulence and thunderstorms? I think we know the answer to that question. It's pretty obvious. But wait, the diversity, equity, and inclusion madness knows no bounds, ladies and gentlemen. University of Michigan. Now, they just won the big football game, undefeated for the season. But the problem is you really can't judge a university by its football team as much as, people would like to do so, especially the alums of the University of Michigan, still drunk with excitement about their big victory in the college football championship. The University of Michigan reports a news organization called the College Fix, probably one worth following. The University of Michigan continues to exponentially grow the number of staffers dedicated to advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion, with at least 241 paid employees now focused on DEI, with a payroll that exceeds $30 million annually. The payroll costs are $23.24 million for salaries. Man, that's good work if you can get it, right? All you have to do is make everybody feel oppressed and convinced that America is dealing them a bad hand. And you're in. You're part of the $23 million payroll. Another $7.44 million is paying for benefits. Well, of course, you got to have those. An amount that would cover in-state tuition and fees for 1,781 graduate students. 13 DEI staff members earn more than $200,000 a year at Michigan, and 66 earn more than $100,000, just standing by waiting for their big promotions. In addition, 76 faculty or staff members work part-time as DEI unit leads, advancing diversity efforts in one of the University of Michigan's 51 schools, colleges, and units, bringing UM's core DEI headcount to 317 people. Now, again, what this has to do with producing educated people ready for the workforce, I have no idea. But more importantly, neither does the University of Michigan. But guess what? They don't care, because DEI is the hill they want to DIE on. I'm getting all confused. You know what's happening in Washington right now? It ain't good, folks. It isn't good. The Senate, that's the United States Senate, the deliberating body that used to be esteemed and respected. Today, 18 January, passed a stopgap funding bill. You know what that means? They green-lighted the printing of more money to layer onto our $34 trillion in debt. They voted 77 to 18 to pass the bill. I guarantee you, North Carolina Senator Tom Tillis was one of the 77. And the measure now goes to the House for a vote later on January 18th in a race to meet a government funding deadline on 19 January. Well, let me just tell you something about these deadlines. You know what they say they're designed to do? They're designed to avert a government shutdown. You know what a government shutdown is? It's pure theater. It is nothing but nonsense. The number of services that remain funded under a government shutdown, military, TSA, Medicare, all the benefits, all the entitlements get paid out. Nothing stops. You know who loses pay for a limited period? Deferred. They get it eventually. All these bureaucrats who go to work every day in these federal buildings in the dark, shadow government, the deep state, they call it. These are the deep staters. Well, I would like to see them have their pay deferred, and I'd like to see them have to stay home for a week or two at a time. Just think of the damage they can't do when they can't go to work. Remember, they told all of us that we might be banned from going to work unless we were vaccinated and boosted and tested and everything under the sun. But these people, they have no restrictions on them, and they're going into these federal buildings every day, and they're regulating things. They're unelected. They're making Americans' lives miserable in many cases. They're damaging the dreams of small business owners. Let that be shut down, because what needs to be shut down, and what Speaker Mike Johnson who may soon be the ex-speaker if he doesn't get his act together, what he needs to do is shut down completely the U.S. southern border, where 10 to 12,000 a day streamed in December. We don't know all the data yet for January. 300,000 in December total. Millions and millions in 2023 alone. They're now in the homeland everywhere, from sea to shining sea, with their backpacks and their new cell phones and their walking around money, and they got a good deal. And now these clowns in the Senate want to cut a deal that will grant these people who are here already amnesty as part of an overall package to send funding in the billions to Ukraine with no accountability, and to send a pittance of money to Israel and to the U.S. Southern Border Patrol. And these are serious politicians in Washington? No, they're not. They think we're stupid. So keep an eye on what the House of Representatives does. Our Congressman Richard Hudson is tweeting earlier today about all of the things that are wrong with the southern border and the immigration crisis. And yet, I guarantee you, he'll be lining up to pass a continuing resolution, a money printing green light that will keep the government funded right on into March. And then we'll start all over again. And between now and March, will they come up with a plan to dramatically cut spending and start reducing our debt? Oh no, they'll be out campaigning because important election season coming up, folks. Didn't you know that? Aren't you paying attention? Well, I hope I haven't drowned you with too much gloom and doom today. I can't help it. It's what's on the radar right now. It's what's coming across the transom. And we try to look for the we try to look for the little glimmers of light, the little rays of hope. I think we saw a big one in Iowa earlier this week when Donald Trump just trounced these completely worthless would-be nominees, Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis. Vivek Ramaswamy immediately dropped out of the race. Not only did he drop out, suspend his campaign, he the very next day went to New Hampshire and heartily endorsed standing next to Donald Trump. The right thing to do by Vivek. Some people say, well, what are his motives? Well, every politician has a motive, of course. We know that. It has been great having you in the studio today for another edition of the Liberty Podcast. Right over my shoulder, you may have noticed that handsome T-shirt, Brothers in Arms, Crush Hamas. You can order those online. Just Google Brothers in Arms and you can get yourself one of those fine-looking T-shirts and then wear it to like a school board meeting or something and watch the heads explode. Always entertaining, isn't it? I think so. We'll see you next time right here in the Liberty Podcast Studio.